The massive Varn warship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Its dark hull, stretching over 5 miles long, absorbed the distant sunlight like a black hole. On the command bridge, High Commander Ral stood tall, his gray skin reflecting the soft blue light of the ship's controls. "Primitive," he muttered, watching the holographic display of Earth's space stations and satellites. "They haven't even colonized their own moon properly." The Varn had ruled their section of the galaxy for over 10,000 years. Their technology was centuries ahead of most species they encountered. When they found a new civilization, they gave them two choices: submit or die. It had worked every single time. "Sir, we're detecting unusual energy readings from the planet," reported First Officer Kex. "Their power output is significant for their technology level." Ral waved his hand dismissively. "They burn fossil fuels and play with simple nuclear fission. Nothing worth noting." The Varn observation fleet spent 3 Earth days gathering data. They watched human television broadcasts, intercepted internet signals, and studied military bases. Everything they saw convinced them that humans were just another species waiting to be conquered. On the 4th day, they made their move. The United Nations Security Council was in session when it happened. The massive hologram appeared in the center of the chamber, showing High Commander Ral in all his alien glory. The delegates gasped, but maintained their composure. "People of Earth," Ral's voice boomed through the speakers. "We are the Varn Dominion. Your civilization has been deemed worthy of our attention." The UN Secretary-General, Mr. Wilson, stood calmly. "Welcome to Earth. We are honored to make first contact with—" Silence. Ral interrupted. "We do not come for pleasantries. The Varn Dominion offers you a simple choice. Submit to our rule, and we will guide your species to greatness. Resist, and we will remove your civilization from existence." The chamber went quiet. Then something unexpected happened. Someone laughed. It started with the Russian delegate, a short chuckle that he tried to hide behind his hand. Then the American representative couldn't help but smile. Within moments, several delegates were struggling to contain their amusement. Ral's expression darkened. "You dare mock the Varn Dominion?" Mr. Wilson cleared his throat, trying to maintain diplomacy. "High Commander, we mean no disrespect. But you must understand, humanity has faced threats of extinction before. From nature, from ourselves, from our own technology. Each time, we've survived. We've grown stronger. Your primitive weapons cannot harm our ships," Ral declared. The Chinese delegate spoke up. "Then why do you need our submission? If we're so primitive, why not ignore us?" This caused more laughter. Ral's face showed confusion for the first time. In all his years of conquering worlds, no species had ever laughed at the Varn ultimatum. "You have 24 Earth hours to submit your surrender," Ral growled, "or face the consequences." The hologram disappeared. After the alien transmission ended, the Security Council's mood changed. They weren't laughing anymore, but they weren't afraid either. They were planning. "Get me the Joint Chiefs," the American delegate said into his phone. "Tell them Operation Falling Star is now active." The Russian delegate was already sending messages. "The Siberian bunkers will be ready in 6 hours." Mr. Wilson looked around the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've prepared for this day. Not aliens specifically, but we've prepared for threats beyond our imagination. Now we show them why you don't threaten humanity." In orbit, the Varn fleet watched with superior smugness as Earth's militaries began to mobilize. They saw the submarines leaving their ports, the fighter jets taking to the skies, and the ground forces moving into position. To them, it looked like the desperate actions of a doomed species. They didn't notice the small teams of hackers already probing their communications. They missed the scientists analyzing their hologram technology. And most importantly, they had no idea that humans had been preparing for alien threats since they first looked up at the stars and wondered, what if? The Varn had made a crucial mistake. They assumed technological superiority meant certain victory. They were about to learn why you should never underestimate humans, especially when backed into a corner. The clock was ticking. 24 hours until the Varn would learn their mistake. 24 hours until humanity would show the galaxy why they survived every threat they'd ever faced. And somewhere in the Pentagon, a general smiled as he looked at the first analysis of Varn communication patterns. "They have no idea what they just started," he whispered. Tom Richards hadn't slept in 36 hours. The screens in front of him showed patterns of Varn ship movements, and something about them bothered him. As Earth's top military data analyst, he had spent years studying how armies moved and positioned themselves. The Varn were doing something odd. "Look at this," he said, pointing to his screen. The other analysts in the Pentagon's underground command center gathered around. "They're leaving gaps in their formation, big ones." General Roberts leaned closer. "Could be overconfidence." "No," Tom shook his head. "It's deliberate. They want us to see these gaps. They're trying to bait us." Above Earth, the Varn fleet continued its intimidating display. Their ships moved in complex patterns, showing off their advanced technology. High Commander Rao watched Earth's reactions with amusement from his command ship. "Their military vessels are so small," Rao commented, watching Earth's naval fleets through their advanced sensors. "Like toys compared to our warships." First Officer Kex wasn't so sure. "Sir, our scans show they're moving their nuclear weapons. All of them. But we can't detect where they're going." "Let them hide their primitive bombs," Rao laughed. "Our shields can withstand forces 1,000 times stronger." But deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, humanity was far from helpless. In a secret facility, Dr. Linda Roberts studied the energy readings from the Varn ships. Every time they moved, their shields created tiny ripples in Earth's magnetic field. "Get me the Joint Chiefs," she said to her assistant. "I think I found something." The next 12 hours were a blur of activity. While the Varn thought humans were panicking, the opposite was true. Every nation had put aside their differences. Old enemies shared intelligence. Former rivals combined their resources. In Moscow, Russian scientists worked with American engineers over video calls. In Beijing, supercomputers analyzed every piece of data about the Varn ships. In New Delhi, mathematical geniuses looked for patterns in Varn shield frequencies. But the Varn saw none of this. Their sensors, designed to detect advanced technology, missed the simple but clever preparations humans were making. "Sir," Kex reported to Rao, "the humans are requesting more time to consider our offer." Rao smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "They're stalling, scared to face their fate." "But sir," Kex insisted, "something feels wrong. Their military leaders don't show fear in their communications. They seem confident. They're primitives playing at war." Rao dismissed him. "What do they know of real combat? The Varn have conquered 1,000 worlds." In the White House Situation Room, the president met with his advisors. Tom Richards presented his findings. "The Varn have a weakness," Tom explained, pointing to his charts. "They rely too much on their advanced technology. They've forgotten the basics of warfare." "Can we exploit this?" the president asked. "We already are," Tom smiled. "Every time they scan us, they're using the same frequencies. Every time they move their ships, they follow predictable patterns. They think we can't understand their technology, so they're not even trying to hide it." Dr. Linda Roberts joined the meeting through a secure video link. "Their shields are strong, but they pulse at regular intervals, if we time it right." The president nodded. "How long until we're ready?" 6 hours, Tom replied. "We need their ships in exactly the right position." Across Earth, final preparations were made. Submarines silently moved into position. Fighter pilots waited in their cockpits. Ground forces stayed hidden but ready. In orbit, High Commander Rao prepared his victory speech. The humans had asked for a 6-hour extension to prepare their surrender. He had graciously granted it, seeing it as proof of their weakness. "Soon," he told his officers, "we'll add another primitive world to our empire. These humans will learn their place in the galaxy." But as the Varn celebrated their coming victory, they missed the small changes in Earth's magnetic field. They didn't notice the brief power fluctuations in their own shields, caused by careful human probing. They never saw the thousands of tiny adjustments humans made, preparing for what was coming. The Varn thought humans were primitive because they didn't have advanced space travel. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous species are the ones still fighting their way up from the ground. In the Pentagon, Tom Richards watched the final pieces fall into place. They really should have studied Earth's military history, he muttered. We've gotten very good at being underestimated. The Varn attack began at dawn. Their energy weapons lit up Earth's sky like new suns. Green beams sliced through clouds, aimed at major military bases. High Commander Raul watched from his command ship, expecting to see explosions and panic. Instead, he saw something impossible. The beams hit nothing but empty ground. Where are their forces? Raul demanded, slamming his fist on his command console. Our scans showed bases here. First Officer Kex checked the readings again. Sir, they moved everything. Underground bunkers, hidden facilities. We're detecting metal and concrete, but they're all empty. The Varn's second wave targeted power plants and electrical grids. Again, their shots hit abandoned facilities. Dummy targets made of simple materials fooled their advanced sensors. Impossible, Raul muttered. They're primitives. They couldn't have. His words were cut short by alarms blaring through the ship. On Earth, Tom Richards watched his screens with satisfaction. They took the bait. All ships in position. Yes, sir, his assistant confirmed. Operation Thunderclap is ready. Tom picked up his secure phone. Madam President, we're ready. The president's voice was firm. Do it. What happened next shocked the Varn fleet. Hundreds of nuclear missiles launched simultaneously from hidden silos, submarines, and mobile launchers. But they didn't fly straight up. Instead, they followed careful paths through Earth's magnetic field, paths calculated to exploit gaps in Varn sensor coverage. Primitive missiles. Raul laughed. Our shields will. The missiles didn't hit the shields. They detonated just outside them. The massive electromagnetic pulses created by the explosions resonated at exactly the same frequency as the Varn shield pulses that Dr. Linda Roberts had discovered. For 3 seconds, every Varn ship's shield fluctuated. That's when the real attack began. Fighter jets that had been hiding in mountain valleys suddenly took off. They carried special weapons designed in the last 24 hours, simple railguns modified to fire at the exact moment the Varn shields weakened. Multiple hull breaches, Kex shouted. How? Their weapons are so simple. Return fire, Raul ordered, but Earth's fighters were already gone, disappearing back into valleys and clouds. The Varn's energy weapons, designed to hit large targets in space, struggled to track the small, fast-moving jets in Earth's atmosphere. Sir, Kex's voice shook. We've lost contact with the entire Third Fleet. Their systems. They're not responding. While the Varn were distracted by the fighters, human hackers had seized their chance. The brief shield disruption had allowed their simple but effective computer viruses to penetrate Varn ships. They didn't try to understand the alien technology. They just overloaded it with garbage data. 20 Varn ships, each capable of destroying a city, now floated helplessly in orbit, their crews unable to control any systems. Impossible, Raul screamed. They're savages. They don't have the technology to... Sir, Kex interrupted. Ground-based energy weapons. They've copied our designs. In the 24 hours they were given, human scientists had studied the basic principles of Varn energy weapons. They couldn't replicate the advanced technology, but they could make crude versions. What these weapons lacked in power, they made up for in numbers. Hundreds of hastily built energy cannons opened fire from hidden positions around the globe. Their beams were weak compared to Varn weapons, but with the shields weakened, they did enough damage. Full retreat, Raul ordered. Get us out of this cursed atmosphere. But as the Varn ships tried to pull back, they discovered another human trick. Small satellites, launched secretly months ago and dismissed as space junk by Varn sensors, activated. They created a web of interference that disrupted Varn navigation systems. We've lost 40% of the fleet, Kex reported, his voice hollow. The humans, they're not following any patterns we know. They're using their technological limitations as advantages. In the Pentagon, Tom Richards allowed himself a small smile. Send the message. The Varn fleet received a simple transmission. This was just our first response. You have 1 hour to surrender. After that, we show you what humans can really do when we're angry. High Commander Rao, for the first time in his military career, felt fear. These humans hadn't just survived their first strike. They had turned it into a crushing defeat. And somehow, he knew they were just getting started. Commander Jane Miller stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiant, Earth's first spaceship built with reverse-engineered Varn technology. The ship wasn't pretty. It looked like someone had bolted human and alien parts together, which was exactly what they had done. All stations report ready, her first officer said. Jane nodded. Just 3 weeks after the Varn's failed attack, humanity had gone from defending Earth to taking the fight to the enemy. Operation Thunderbolt was about to begin. Send the signal, she ordered. All ships, execute. Around the Earth, 100 ships like the Defiant powered up their engines. They weren't as advanced as Varn vessels, but they didn't need to be. They just needed to work. And his flagship, now stationed safely behind Mars, High Commander Rao received the alert. They're launching ships? Impossible. They can't have built a space fleet so quickly. Sir, First Officer Kex reported, these ships, they're using our own technology against us, but they've modified it in ways we've never seen. The human fleet moved in an odd pattern. Instead of staying together in a proper military formation, they spread out randomly. Some ships flew sideways, others spun slowly. To Varn sensors, they looked like malfunctioning vessels. That was exactly what Jane wanted them to think. All ships, activate scramblers, she commanded. The Varn fleet's sensors suddenly went crazy. The human ships were using modified versions of the Varn's own sensor technology, but with a twist. They broadcast conflicting signals that made each human ship appear to be in 3 places at once. I can't get a target lock, a Varn weapons officer shouted. Fire at all of them, Rao ordered. But as the Varn ships fired, they hit nothing but empty space. The human vessels weren't where they appeared to be. Years of fighting in Earth's oceans had taught human captains how to use sensor ghosts and false readings. Launch the drones, Jane ordered. Thousands of small, simple drones shot out from the human ships. They were basic machines, barely more than engines and transmitters. But each one broadcast the same sensor jamming signals as the larger ships. The Varn's targeting computers couldn't handle it. Their advanced systems, designed to track sophisticated enemy vessels, were overwhelmed by the sheer number of simple signals. This is barbaric, Rao shouted. They're not fighting properly. That's when Jane gave the order she'd been waiting for. All ships, initiate Operation Slingshot. The human fleet had been slowly moving into position around Mars. Now they used the planet's gravity to accelerate, something the Varn never did because their engines were too powerful to need such tricks. Multiple human vessels approaching at extreme velocity, Kex warned. The human ships shot past the Varn fleet like bullets. As they passed, they launched their secret weapons, modified versions of Earth's old nuclear missiles, but now enhanced with Varn technology. Shields at maximum, Rao ordered, but the missiles didn't hit the shields. Instead, they detonated in carefully planned patterns around the Varn ships. The explosions created a web of electromagnetic pulses, trapping the Varn vessels in a storm of radiation and interference. We're losing power, Kex reported. The radiation, it's affecting our systems in ways we've never seen. The human fleet regrouped on the other side of the Varn formation. Their ships were battered from the extreme maneuver, but intact. The Varn fleet was in chaos. Send the message, Jane ordered. On his failing command ship, Rao received the transmission. This is Commander Jane Miller of Earth's Defense Fleet. Your sensors are disabled. Your weapons are offline. We can destroy your entire fleet right now. But unlike you, we believe in mercy. Surrender, and we will spare your lives. Rao stared at the message in disbelief. In just 3 weeks, humans had not only learned to use Varn technology, but had found ways to use it that the Varn had never imagined. Sir, Kex said quietly. More human ships are emerging from behind Earth's moon. They have more weapons we've never seen before. For the first time in Varn history, a fleet commander had to consider surrender, and as Raoul watched the human ships move with deadly precision through space, he realized his species had made a terrible mistake. They hadn't discovered a primitive civilization. They had awakened a sleeping giant. The Varn High Council met in their grand chamber for the first time in 50 years. Their oval faces showed worry, an expression no younger Varn had ever seen on their leaders. "How?" asked the head counselor, his gray skin pale with stress. "How did we lose 6 fleets in 2 months?" The human ships had changed everything. After their first victory near Mars, Earth's forces hadn't stopped. They pushed outward, attacking Varn bases across the solar system. But it wasn't just their ships that terrified the Varn. It was how they fought. In the latest battle, humans had hidden ships inside asteroids. The Varn, with all their advanced sensors, hadn't detected the simple metal holes among the space rocks. The human ships had waited until the Varn fleet passed, then emerged like wasps from a hidden nest. "Sir," a military advisor reported, "we've lost contact with our base on Jupiter's moon." The Varn base on Europa had been their strongest outpost in the solar system. It had shields that could withstand any known weapon, but humans, they were learning, didn't use known weapons. Tom Richards, now promoted to Chief of Earth's Defense Intelligence, watched the footage from Europa. The human attack had been brilliantly simple. They hadn't tried to break through the shields. Instead, they had used drilling machines, technology the Varn considered too primitive to be a threat. The drills had gone right through Europa's ice, under the shield barrier. The base never saw the attack coming from below. "They adapt too quickly," First Officer Kext told the Council. After his experiences with High Commander Raoul's defeat, he had been promoted to Chief Military Advisor. "Every time we develop a counter to their tactics, they change them." In Earth's orbit, Commander Jane Miller's fleet was growing. More ships joined every day, each one different from the last. Humans didn't mass-produce identical ships like the Varn. They built each vessel for a specific purpose, making them unpredictable. "We found something interesting in the captured Varn computers," Dr. Linda Roberts reported to the Earth Defense Council. "Their technology hasn't changed much in 1,000 years. They've just been making the same things more powerful." This was humanity's greatest advantage. While the Varn had relied on their superior technology, humans had never stopped thinking of new ways to fight. Each defeat taught them. Each victory gave them new ideas. "Look at this," Tom Richards pointed to his screen, showing the Council a Varn ship's design. "Their ships are perfect. Every system works exactly as planned. That's their weakness." "How is perfection a weakness?" a general asked. "Because they don't know how to handle imperfection," Tom explained. "Their systems crash when something unexpected happens. They don't know how to improvise." The Varn learned this lesson hard way when they tried to attack Earth's moon base. Their ships, with their perfect targeting systems, couldn't handle the simple dust clouds humans had created. The moon dust got into their engines, something their designers had never considered possible. "We've confirmed the numbers," Kex reported to the Varn Council. "Humans have captured 30% of our fleet's technology, but they're not just copying it. They're changing it, making it work in ways we never imagined." In her flagship, Commander Miller reviewed the latest battle plans. Humans had learned that Varn ships couldn't operate well in tight spaces. Now, her fleet was preparing to drive them into an asteroid field. "They still think like a superior force," she told her officers. "They expect us to fight like they do. That's why we'll win." The Varn Council received reports from across their empire. Other species, seeing humanity's success, were beginning to resist. The perfect order they had maintained for thousands of years was cracking. "Perhaps," the head counselor said quietly, "we should consider negotiating with these humans." "It may be too late," Kex replied. "They're not just defending anymore. They're coming for us, and they're bringing every clever, primitive, unexpected trick they know." In Earth's laboratories, scientists studied captured Varn technology. But unlike the Varn, they didn't try to make it more powerful. They made it simpler, cheaper, easier to modify. They made it human. The turning point hadn't come from a single great victory. It had come from the Varn finally understanding what they had awakened. Humans weren't just fighting back. They were revolutionizing warfare itself. And they were just getting started. Mark Thompson wasn't a soldier or a captain. He was just an engineer who liked fixing things. But as he stood in front of the Earth Defense Council, he held the key to winning the war. It's simple, really, he explained, pointing to his diagrams. The Varn used energy to power everything, but we found a better way. The council members leaned forward. After 6 months of war, Earth had pushed the Varn out of the solar system. Now they were ready to take the fight to enemy territory. The Varn's weapons need huge power sources, Mark continued. We made ours smaller. Weaker, yes, but we can put them everywhere. Quantity over quality. In space, Commander Jane Miller watched as her engineers installed the new weapons on her fleet. They didn't look impressive, just small boxes attached to the ship's hulls. But appearances were deceiving. Begin the test, she ordered. A single human ship approached a captured Varn cruiser. The small boxes activated. Instead of one powerful energy beam, they fired hundreds of tiny pulses. Each pulse was weak, but together they created a pattern that disrupted the Varn shields completely. It worked, Mark shouted, watching the test results. Their shields are designed to block big hits. They can't handle thousands of small ones. The Varn never saw it coming. Their entire defense strategy was based on powerful shields stopping powerful weapons. They weren't prepared for humans to think differently. All ships, prepare for Operation Swarm, Commander Miller announced to her fleet. The name was perfect. Like insects, Earth's ships would attack with overwhelming numbers rather than overwhelming power. On the Varn homeworld, the High Council received disturbing reports. Human ships had been spotted near their outer colonies, but something was wrong with the sensor readings. These can't be right, a Varn technician said. It shows thousands of ships, but they're all too small to be warships. They were wrong. Humans had built a new kind of fleet. Instead of large, powerful ships, they made smaller ones. Each vessel carried Mark's new weapons and was piloted by only 2 or 3 crew members. Launch the attack, Commander Miller ordered. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace near a Varn military base. But instead of forming a traditional battle line, they scattered in all directions. The Varn defense ships tried to target them, but there were too many. Their weapons are pathetic, a Varn commander reported. Each hit barely damages our shields. Then he noticed something terrible. The shields weren't stopping the hits. The tiny energy pulses were passing through, causing small amounts of damage, and there were thousands of pulses every second. It's like being eaten alive by insects, First Officer Kex told the High Council. Our shields can't adapt. Our weapons can't target them all, and the humans just keep coming. Mark's innovation didn't stop with weapons. He had also found a way to use the Varn's own communication systems against them. Every human ship broadcast signals that confused Varn computers, making each small ship look like 3 or 4. Sir, a Varn sensor operator shouted, I'm detecting human ships inside our atmosphere. That was supposed to be impossible. The Varn had a planetary shield that no ship could penetrate, but humans had found a way. They used the same frequency as Varn supply ships, slipping through gaps in the shield that the Varn didn't even know existed. In her flagship, Commander Miller received the reports. The Varn's outer defenses were falling. Their perfect system was breaking down in the face of human ingenuity. Send the message to Earth, she ordered. Phase 1 complete, ready to begin the final push. The Varn High Council met an emergency session. Their military, undefeated for thousands of years, was being taken apart by what they had called primitives. And worse, other species in their empire were watching. How do we stop them? The head counselor asked desperately. Kex shook his head. We can't. They've completely changed the rules of warfare. Every time we adjust, they come up with something new. Mark Thompson, meanwhile, was already working on his next idea, because that's what humans did. They never stopped innovating, never stopped adapting. The Varn were about to learn that technology alone doesn't win wars. Innovation does. The Varn capital city gleamed under its twin suns. For 10,000 years, it had been the center of their empire. Now, human ships filled its skies. Inside the High Council chamber, the mood was grim. Through the large windows, they could see Commander Jane Miller's flagship hovering above the city. It wasn't the biggest ship in the human fleet, but its presence sent a clear message. "The humans request our surrender," the head counselor announced. "They have disabled our planetary defenses. Their ships surround every major city. We have no choice." First Officer Kex, now the highest-ranking military officer left, stood up. "Perhaps we deserve this. We thought ourselves superior. We were wrong." The doors opened, and the human delegation entered. Commander Miller led them, followed by Tom Richards and Mark Thompson. The Varn counselors expected to see anger or triumph on their faces. Instead, they saw something unexpected: calm professionalism. "Your empire has fallen," Commander Miller stated simply. "But that doesn't mean your civilization has too." The Varn waited for demands of unconditional surrender, for harsh punishments. They had shown no mercy in their conquests. They expected none in return. Tom Richards stepped forward, holding a data tablet. "We've prepared a peace treaty. You might be surprised by its terms." The head counselor read the document, his eyes widening. This can't be right. You're offering us autonomy, under supervision, but still." "We're not here to destroy you," Commander Miller explained. "Humanity doesn't want an empire. We want peace. Real peace, not the forced submission you called peace." Mark Thompson had been studying the Varn's city through the windows. "Your technology is amazing," he said. "You just stopped trying to improve it. Got too comfortable with being on top." The treaty's terms were surprisingly merciful. The Varn would lose their empire but keep their homeworld. They would have to free all subjugated species and help them rebuild. Most surprisingly, Earth offered to help the Varn themselves advance. "We don't understand," a council member said. "We tried to destroy your world. Why show mercy?" "Because that's what makes us different," Tom Richards replied. "You conquer because you think you're superior. We fight only when we have to, and we stop when we've won." Outside the council chamber, the news spread quickly through the Varn population. Many expected enslavement or death. Instead, they heard about cooperation and reconstruction. "There's more," Commander Miller continued. "We've contacted the species you conquered. Most have agreed to join a new galactic council. Every world will have an equal voice, including yours if you choose to join." The Varn High Council looked at each other in disbelief. Their empire had lasted 10,000 years because they never showed weakness, never showed mercy. Yet here were the humans, powerful enough to destroy them, offering peace instead. "Why?" the head counselor asked. "What do you gain from this?" "We gain allies instead of enemies," Miller answered. "We gain trading partners instead of slaves. We gain friends instead of subjects. That's worth more than any empire." As the treaty was signed, something remarkable happened. Varn citizens, watching through public broadcasts, began to feel something new: hope. Not the false pride of superiority, but real hope for a better future. "There will be challenges," Tom Richards warned. "Change isn't easy, but we'll help you adapt. That's what humans are good at, adapting and helping others do the same." In orbit, the human fleet began to withdraw from their battle positions. They kept enough ships to maintain security, but moved the rest back, showing trust in the peace they had just created. Mark Thompson was already talking with Varn engineers, sharing ideas about combining their technologies in new ways. The Varn were surprised to find themselves excited about learning from these primitives who had defeated them. "Remember this day," Commander Miller told the council as the ceremony ended, "not as the day you lost an empire, but as the day you joined something better, a community of equals." The war was over. The Varn had learned their lesson, not through destruction but through mercy. They had challenged humanity, thinking they would find primitive savages. Instead, they found something far more powerful, a species that could win a war without losing its humanity. And as the twin suns set on the Varn capital, a new age began. not an age of empires and conquest, but one of cooperation and growth. The price of challenging humanity hadn't been extinction, it had been enlightenment.